Hello and welcome to another episode of Pakistonomy. My name is Yunus, and we will be back to covering some startups over the next few weeks, starting with Asim Kidwai today, who is the co-founder and CEO at LOKAL. LOKAL is a startup that is looking to transform Pakistan's tourism sector, so we will talk to Asim about that. He studied at the University of Michigan, which is where some of my best friends also went to school, and I would love to hear from Asim what made him want to move back a few years ago, and he started working at in Pakistan at places like Kia Motors, and played a key role in sort of helping Kia launch its first ever vehicle in the country. And maybe we'll get to that as well towards the tail end of the podcast. But first, tourism, Asim. When I've been living in the U.S. since I left for undergrad in 2007. But every
Wow.
time I come back, I try to find out, okay, how do I experience the culture, right? Because it's like there's a
Mm.
lot that I still have not seen,
Yep.
and there's
Yep.
still a lot that my family has not seen, and it's always difficult. And it's getting easier, but it's always difficult to
Mm.
know that you're
Yep.
staying at a safe place, it's reliable, things work. Because the
Yep.
infrastructure, let's be honest, in some of the most beautiful parts of Pakistan is not really there. So first of
Yep.
all, tell us the origin story about LOKAL. What is it? What do you do? And how
Mhm.
did it come about? Like where did this idea come from?
Perfect. First of all, thank you for thank you for that great introduction, Uzair, and thank you for having me on your podcast. I think to start off, I'm just going to describe local in a nutshell, and that's it's a tech-first hospitality startup on a mission to revolutionize the budget hotel accommodation industry in the country, right? Before I go into how we do it or what exactly we do, I think it's important to kind of build onto what you were talking about, the lack of infrastructure in the Pakistani tourism landscape. And that's exactly what we're kind of working on. When I initially started working on this idea, we did quite a bit of research into the accommodation industry, the travel and tourism industry, as a whole, right? And what I was surprised to know, I'm sure you'd be surprised to know as well, is there are approximately 8,000 official, unofficial hotels and guest houses in Pakistan. However, if I asked you to name a few, you'd probably name five or six of them, which are your, big chains. And that's kind of the biggest challenge in this industry, which can potentially be a big contributor to the country's GDP, where you have these luxury chains which are unaffordable for a majority of the population. We did a bit of research and we figured out that approximately around 90% of the population is looking for a budget solution, right? Whenever they travel. So these luxury chains don't really fit in there. When you come down to the more affordable options, you're looking at booking portals like booking.com and Airbnb. And the biggest challenge that comes out there is that these portals don't really take ownership of the actual staying experience of their facilities on ground, right? Which ends in being finding budget accommodation overall, a huge challenge and a huge inhibitor for anyone who wants to travel locally. And that's essentially where we come in, where we're curating a network of standardized budget hotel rooms, where we deliver a reliable quality and affordable stay so that travelers aren't able to just book, but also stay hassle free. How do we do it? It's actually, when you're looking at this market, the one thing that we wanted to do, we wanted to create strong partnerships. So we took over existing white space hotels. We upgraded their rooms and services as per international standards, as per what we find abroad. And we plugged in our trademark tech stack into these hotels, into these processes to manage and operate these hotels. The idea again was to create a platform that enables a great booking and a great staying experience.
That's awesome. So it's just like kind of like, a mix, I would say, and correct me if I'm wrong here, kind of like Airbnb, but you're not going to people's homes and their rooms, so it's different.
Yeah,
But then
yeah,
I think about, for example, Oyo in India, that sort of was
yeah,
targeting a similar
yeah,
segment. So would that be a
yeah,
fair
yeah.
comparison that you're trying to do?
Yes. So the idea inherently is Airbnb again. Firstly, of course, it focuses on unofficial accommodation, but more than that, it's a booking portal, right? They have no control on the quality or the actual experience that a traveler or a person staying in those accommodations would get. And that's essentially our biggest area that we focused on, where we're not just providing a booking portal or an online solution to find the right places, but we also actually go into those places and improve the quality of those hotels. And again, these are hotels that we're partnering with. So the key there is that we've used a lot of technology. We've used AI-backed what we call our journey quality monitoring applications and a bunch of other tools to ensure that no matter where we are, all the way right now from Karachi to up north in Skardu, we're able to deliver that quality consistently, and that's where the reliability factor comes in.
That's awesome. So help me under two questions on this now, right? So first, let's
Yeah,
look at the supply side. You are
yeah,
going into hotels trying to say, okay, we can bring you more demand.
yeah,
That's what's in it for
yeah,
you if you partner.
yeah,
Raise
yeah,
your quality bar, more efficient
yeah,
operations. We have a tech
yeah,
stack, etc. So it gets
yeah,
rid of some of the hassle for an
yeah,
entrepreneur that's running that hotel. But there's also this myth, right? That I call it a myth because I've had enough conversations with startup founders who've engaged sort of with these types of entrepreneurs that they don't want to
yeah.
modernize, they don't want to document, they don't want to adopt technology. And I'm putting all of this in
Yeah.
air quotes for those who are listening to audio only. Tell us a bit about that experience on the supply side when you and your team go to, let's say, a place in Skardu and say, "Okay, yaar, aapki location bahut achhi hai, with great
Yeah,
views, but there are things you
yeah,
can upgrade." Now, I'll give you my own example. I remember
yeah,
before we recorded, you were talking about how you went to Islamabad for your American visa. I had a similar experience, and we stayed at
yeah.
one of these, not five-star premium hotels. We stayed at a
Mm.
what would be described as an inn in the United States. And
Right,
some
right,
parts of
right.
the place were great. It was like great historical architecture and things like that. But some parts I still remember as a teenager were not great. Like the blanket was a bit musty,
Exactly.
right? Things like
Exactly.
that. You kind of knew that wo choti choti cheezein were not done the right way.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
But when you go to an entrepreneur like that, what's that journey like? How do they receive somebody like local coming in and saying that we can help you do better? Is there
Yeah.
resistance? Is that just a myth? Like, help the audience understand that.
So actually, what you're just talking about is the most interesting part of my job. I think part of it is a myth, but part of it is actually true. The fact of the matter is, across the country, you find different kinds of people, and you'll find people who are extremely interested in changing. You'll find people who resist that change as well, and a lot of it depends on their own thinking of the situation, their own thinking of and thinking understanding of the local market as well as the global market, and tools like technology as a whole. So specifically talking about Kardu, that's one market that really blew our minds, because what you wouldn't expect and what we didn't expect was the willingness to truly be able to change. I think that, and not just Kardu, we can talk Hunza, we can talk Swat, we can talk all the beautiful regions in our country. When we first went in and we met these hotel owners, and what we tactically do is, every time we're going into a new city, we try and talk to every single hotel owner that exists in that particular region. So the sort of response we got was actually unbelievable, because these were people who, to a large extent, weren't even aware of what was happening in the world generally in the hospitality industry. They had these locations in amazing places, and the understanding they had was to be able to truly uplift our services, to be able to truly uplift what we were trying to do. We need to involve experts. We need to involve people who know what they're talking about. We need to involve people who are truly able to deliver the sort of experience that that is expected of a hotel. And I think a big reason behind this response from areas like Skardu was because there has been a considerable amount of international travel in these regions, right? And I believe, especially with Hunza and Skardu, international travelers have been visiting these places for much longer than they were marketable to Pakistanis in general. So with that interaction and with those relationships that they've created, they've consistently been able to understand, okay, there is something better. There are improvements to be made. There are things to be done that maybe we can't do ourselves. And the same applies to across Pakistan. Again, you find people who really want to do something better. You find people who understand their limitations, or you find people who understand the challenges and they want to figure a way out. And that's where they find someone like us and they partner with us, and are truly able to see the difference in terms of not just revenue, not just ratings, but also the overall uplift in their hospitality experience, in their facilities hospitality experience. which is something that they appreciate and has been an enabler for us as well to grow over these past few years.
Fascinating. On the flip side now, demand side, right? We
Yeah,
have seen pictures in the summer season, traffic jams north of Islamabad, hotels fully booked, some safety concerns being raised. I was
yeah,
just watching some clips of, for example, the caretaker foreign minister who's in New York talking about,
yeah,
how international travelers should come to Pakistan because it's the birthplace of Hinduism and it has historical temples and Sikh sites and Buddhist venues and remains of Alexander's armies and the ancient, really ancient history that is worth seeing, in addition to the natural
yeah,
beauty that is there across the country as well. And then, of course, there's modern
yeah,
architecture that is worth checking out in cities as well. But of course,
yeah.
international travelers are still a very small segment compared to other
Hmm.
markets like Sri Lanka, Thailand, even India, for that matter.
Yeah, yeah,
Domestic Pakistan is 250 million people. A lot of domestic tourism has picked up because of the infrastructure now being built up. So, what's the state of the tourism industry in Pakistan right now? How has this summer season been? Because again, I asked in the podcast, we cover a lot about things like, inflation, people's purchasing power declining, etc. So, would love
yeah,
your sense as sort of being on the tourism side, which is obviously very much impacted by these things.
yeah,
What has
yeah.
the season been like, and what's the state of the tourism industry in Pakistan?
So it's interesting, right? Because while we have a good mix of hotels in 12-month markets like Karachi, Lahore, Islamabad, Murrey, Swat, we also have a good chunk of our inventory in the Huzars and the Skardus of the country. And earlier this year, around April, May, we ourselves, while we were still bullish, we were still looking to see what sort of impact the change in economical conditions would have on local traveling, right? And the result we saw was actually pretty interesting because the fact that foreign travel has become overly expensive has actually given people the chance to finally look inwards. I think all of us now have a very good understanding about the sort of landscapes that we have and the beauty that exists in this country, right? The biggest challenge and the biggest barrier for most of these people, and I think that's something that we've talked about already, is that there is a lack of infrastructure and the lack of standards in terms of accommodation. And every time they think about traveling locally, this is something that really becomes a blockade for them. And with facilities like local and other facilities as well coming up, which do fulfill those promises, that which are able to provide the right standards and the right level of service at these locations and at value for money prices as well. I think this it has become an encouraging factor for local travelers to actually start exploring and where they can't afford going abroad, actually start traveling inwards, and that's actually what we saw. Thankfully, all over June, July, August, we were able to see some amazing numbers in terms of the number of tourists who visited our locations up north as well as tourism cities across Pakistan that we have.
So tell me a bit about sort of how you are reaching out to the market and what your marketing growth strategy has been like over the course of the last few months and what's changing. What are you looking to do next? Number one.
Yeah,
And related
yeah,
to that, another question that I have, and I asked a lot of entrepreneurs, it like, when any business starts, you make certain assumptions of the market. Some are
yeah,
proven correct, many are
yeah,
not. And that's
yeah,
always a learning experience. So what were some
yeah,
assumptions that you now look back at and say कि यार ये वाली चीज जो है ना हमने गलत सोची थी, but you
yeah,
adjusted, and how did you adjust? Help the audience understand that journey of an entrepreneur where you're navigating, you just don't have a strategy that's sort of static. It's always
yeah,
evolving, particularly in a place like Pakistan. So how are
yeah,
you reaching out to the market, and what are some things that you've thought through in
yeah.
your strategy and evolved over the course of time?
So from the get-go, we had this direction that to be able to, because the market's so big and the gap is so huge, to be able to capture the right market, we just have to deliver the right product. So instead of spending a lot of dollars into marketing and telling everyone about local, we decided to create a product that speaks about itself. And that's where the consistency part comes in. We knew that the gap exists in a way where, if, for example, we are able to provide a good product in Karachi and promise that you'll get the same facility in Lahore, in Islamabad, in Skardu, in Swat, people will follow that consistency pattern and people will, resonate to that. And that's essentially what we've seen. Today, we have a retention rate close to 60% between these different cities. And it's largely due to the fact that, again, the existing platforms that people use for booking don't have that sort of reliability and normally result in people getting unexpected surprises every time they visit, right? A big challenge with platforms like booking.com is the huge cancellation rate, because everyone who's booking a facility there is also booking 5 different facilities simultaneously because they want to go on ground and actually see these facilities before they pay. But because of our consistency factor, they're able to trust us much more than any other player. Uh, as far as assumptions are created, I think there's a ton of assumptions. We've always had this belief, every time you have an assumption, you need to act on it quickly and prove or disprove it. But I think the biggest one was our bet on the online market. We had an understanding of the platforms that exist, and we thought, okay, if we're just able to create a platform, we'll be able to generate business because of that consistency factor. But what we were able to realize pretty soon is that Pakistan, in terms of while there is high internet penetration and there's high smartphone penetration, people still like to, especially with accommodation, people still like to talk and figure out what the product is before they make that purchase. So we very early on had to make a quick switch in our strategy in terms of marketing and move towards from just having an online presence to creating an online communication channel where we would be able to interact with our potential customers, explain to them what local is, and then bring them onto our customer journey. And that's, I think, the biggest learning point. However, building on that and building on our consultancy, we've been able to change that. We are currently one of the only accommodation channels in Pakistan or platforms in Pakistan that have the amount of online customers, the percentage of online customers that we have. And I think that is a big reason, a big difference between us and anyone else, that we have been able to create that online presence purely because in throughout our journey we keep on introducing tech in a very comfortable manner for all sorts of guests. Slowly they're able to move upwards and they're able to go from an offline customer journey to an online customer journey with the help of apps, with the help of things like self check-in, with the help of different tools which enables them to actually go on our website and utilize our online tools. They eventually move on to the online experience. So where we started off with the bare minimum of online customers, today a large percentage of our customers are actually booking our rooms online. So yeah, that's something that I'd say that truly defined our existence in the very beginning, and something that was proven to be a bit of a challenge, but thankfully we've been able to overcome them.
That's an important point you make, and makes me think, okay, so one of the things, particularly in the sector in tourism, right, is that human touch.
Yeah.
You don't want to show up in Hunza and then say, okay, I'm not happy, and then I can't connect to communications channel, right? But then good customer service requires really top talent and really good investment in training and capabilities where, basic things like the customer is always right. How do you talk to them? And in Pakistan, because of the cultural diversity, you kind of need to know how to communicate with different people in a different way, right? Because styles are different. It's not just like the German way of communicating. There's a Karachi way of communicating, a Lahori way of communicating, a Saraiki and a Baloch way of it's very different. So how do you think about talent within your organization? And what are some ways in which you're trying to sort of invest in that talent or find the right talent that allows you to continue scaling in the way you have? Primarily because the sector you are in, it takes 100 years, right, to build a reputation of excellent customer service, but you make a few bad choices on the talent side and it can all come crashing down. So how are you thinking about that?
Listen, the way everything that you've said is very close to how we think. The way we look at it is, one, any good experience can be completely destroyed by bad customer service, and the worst of experiences can be completely secured or rescued by just knowing how to talk and just knowing how to provide that level of communication. There's two ways how we try to achieve it, and the biggest thing that I think that we've been able to succeed in is developing local workforces, which is kind of a part of our ethos as well. We follow this line, which is essentially buy locals for locals. So every time we are going into a particular city, we are not taking massive amounts of staff from, let's say, our headquarters in Karachi or any other city to those particular locations. We actually go in with a very lean team, and we upskill, we train and upskill the local workforce there. So that not only are we improving their level of hospitality, but simultaneously the hospitality being delivered at our hotels in these particular regions is very true to the cultures of those regions as well, right? And that's where we get that authenticity, and that's where our true mission of being able to create experiences that are truly local comes to life. So that's from a direct human to customer touch point of view. As far as our teams are concerned, it's not just about being able to communicate with the customer when they're on ground, but we have heavy channels of communication online as well. So from the minute that you booked a room with us, we will be on the phone with you. We will be communicating with you through different channels. And the idea there is to again have the highest form of hospitality available, have the highest form of communication available, create relationships with our customers more than anything, right? So that from the get-go they feel comfortable. And that's what's very important. I think everything that I've said in terms of how customer thinks in this market, in terms of how they have been, for the lack of a better word, fooled over a bunch of years till now. That's how you overcome them, by creating that relationship, by from the get-go telling them, that we're here for you no matter what. It's not just you being at the hotel. We're talking to you from day one. We'll be there till the very end. And that's how we've created our customer journey, with different reaching out to the customer at different touch points, reaching out to their journey, and ensuring that at all points in time they have someone to talk to, they have someone to solve any problems that they could potentially have, whether that's on ground or off ground. Yeah.
In terms of future growth and looking ahead, couple of questions on my mind. One, what's your growth strategy ahead into the future, and what are you most excited about as part of that growth strategy? And linked to that is the other question I have, which is, again, on the demand side, if you're a domestic traveler who's been to Hunza, who's been to Swat, who's been to Skardu, we're always looking for a new experience, right? So that means that वापसी hunza nahi jana, kahin aur jana hai. So how are you thinking about sort of continuing to feed that itch that the experience oriented customer has, because that's the repeat customer, right? That's not the one time person who will keep coming back to you with a great experience, but also great expectation that you will take them to a new place that they have not discovered yet. So how are you thinking about other parts of Pakistan? What is exciting? What are the undiscovered gems that you have an eye on? And you're like, you know what, ugly entry jo hai, wo idhar honi hai, because that's where people will really have a great time.
Yeah. Yeah. So, when as far as this growth strategy is concerned, we started off with a bunch of cities divided into 12-month markets like Karachi, Lahore, Islamabad, which are your work travelers as well as your family travelers. Your tourist markets like Mani and Swat and Kalam, which are again live for 12 months, and then your key tourist markets like Hunza and Skardu, which are live for 8 to 10 months in a year. And that was the initial plan, to start off and create a stronghold in these cities, which is what we've done and what we will continue doing over the next few months and years. However, as you've said, a key part of delivering that local experience is the exploration angle, right? We being in these cities and having stronghold in these cities, have a very good understanding of what they have to offer, not just in terms of the particular cities that we're in, but the location in general. And of course, there are challenges. There are challenges infrastructurally. There are challenges in terms of getting to some of the most beautiful spots that we can think of. I mean, just look at Baltistan. It has some of the highest mountain peaks in the world in one region, right? I'm talking about within the space of 6 to 8 hours, you can see what, around 6 to 8 of the highest mountain peaks in the world. That's unbelievable. So of course, there's areas with extreme high potential, and there's areas that we've earmarked in terms of from an exploration angle to continue to curate that local chain and that local journey. However, we have to be very careful in terms of taking decisions as per where we need to grow and where we need to have our facilities, right? Because at the base of it all is delivery of those standards, delivery of those promises that we have to give to our customers in order to provide them with accommodation that is truly as per international benchmarks, right? So yeah, it's interesting. At the same time, it'll take its time. What our goal is to keep on growing and keep on pushing those barriers slowly and slowly and slowly, to encapsulate as many of these areas as we can. The third thing from a growth point of view, of course, is to provide today. If you go into the Rahim Yar Khans and the Bhavalpurs and the Takhars of our country, I think those are the areas with the biggest challenge in terms of accommodation. Of course, a lot of people overlook these areas because, in terms of demand, they're not the most fruitful either. But those are areas that we want to enter as well, and those are areas that we really want to make a part of our network to again keep on continuing down that chain. And then finally, of course, we're looking at global expansion pretty interestingly as well. That was our goal for the fourth quarter of this year, and we already started looking down some markets, especially the GCC, to see how we can essentially enter them.
Yeah, the Bhavalpur point is interesting and just came to my mind. If I think about
Yeah.
its heritage and its history,
Yeah.
and its cultural orientation,
Yeah.
for a
Yeah.
long period of time, it could be Pakistan's Rajasthan, right? Like, I have a
Yeah.
lot of
Yeah.
Indian friends who always remind me, next time you come to India, you got to go to Rajasthan and explore. I've been to Jaipur, but I haven't explored it per se. And I think of Bhavalpur as sort of being that equivalent in Pakistan, if the infrastructure is built and the story is told about its heritage, right? I don't know how you think about it.
Listen, I just I've been around. Thankfully, I've been around most areas in Pakistan over the last few years, especially through this journey with local. And the one thing I could tell you is, you start from Karachi. In fact, go further down south, and you start from Gwadar, and then you move up north all the way to Skardu. Uh, there are a million different stories that you will hear. There's multiple different cultures. Every region has something important to its own, right? Every region has its own culture. Every region has its own food. Every region has its own history, its own traditions, and all of them are equally interesting. All of them are equally exciting as experiences. So the goal, of course, is to make these experiences more and more available, accessible to everyone who wants to travel locally, right? And to bring them out, because I mean, we saw the same thing with Honza and Skardu. No one knew about these, but the minute people started realizing them, they started, jumping on to opportunities to go and visit these cities. And I believe we'll see the same thing in any other region that we open up to the general public in terms of exploration, where we are able to provide them with the right infrastructure to truly come in and experience these beautiful, again, stories that people have, these regions have. I think for me, especially being someone who's moved back, it was a very interesting journey over these past few years, because you meet so many different kinds of people. You meet so many different kinds of even mom and pop stores, entrepreneurs. You can call them whatever we essentially like. But there's people who are really at this point trying their level best to bring their own culture, their own identity to life. And at the base of it all is to be able to do something for the country, right? To be able to do something for Pakistan. So I think the more likes these people get, the more chances these people get to truly shine on a national or a global stage, the more attracted people are going to get from a demand side to go and really check them out.
Last question on this is amazing in terms of what you and your team are doing, because I think, we often talk about in macro conversations, right, about the potential of tourism and the soft power of tourism and how it can transform local economies. But your team is building the infrastructure to make that possible. So it's super, super exciting for me to hear your success and what drives you. But this is a time of great pessimism in Pakistan. You go on social media, you listen to even this podcast over the last it's been 8 months, 9 months of this year alone. It's been pretty down, and I've been pretty down. But when I talk to entrepreneurs like you, it's sort of it's inspirational. It inserts a bit of optimism. You've put a lot of miles on the road going across Pakistan. So tell the audience a bit about what that has been like in these times where there is so much negativity around what's happening in the country, and rightfully so for a lot of reasons. But you are an entrepreneur, and to do what you do, you have to be an eternal optimist. Otherwise, you wouldn't be in this business. So, I would love for you to spend maybe 5, 6 minutes about that whole experience going around the country and what keeps you going as in a sector that is so prone to economic ups and downs, and we're in the downs of the downs. So what are you seeing on the ground? What inspires you when you meet with people in these communities that says, you know what, we're going to wake up, go into new markets and continue expanding because this is worth doing despite all
Yeah.
the horror of the
Yeah.
economy stories that we hear?
At the base of everything that we say about Pakistan, and this is a fact that everyone accepts and is common knowledge, is that we're hustlers. No matter what we're doing, no matter what's the condition, no matter what our situation, we will always be driven to overcome whatever the challenges are. And we've done it so many times in the past. That's essentially what I saw. I think it's been very unique. The traveling experience. I was just telling you before we started this conversation that my traveling in Pakistan has been used to be extremely limited before I started local. So I got the opportunity to truly, make it a mission for myself to see Pakistan through the eyes of these local communities, these local entrepreneurs, people in general around the country, living in different conditions, living in, and at times not the best conditions either. There are areas where you can't even think about accommodation or hospitality infrastructure because, these are areas where basic infrastructure like electricity, water, power is a challenge. Uh, but no matter where we've gone, we've seen people trying to do something, and again, at the base of it all is trying to do something for their country. I think at a very human level, everyone has an understanding that if anything's got to change in a country like ours, it has to be done ourselves. It has to be done purely through our own drive, purely through our own mission to really change or revolutionize anything and everything that we're doing, right? And that's what you see at every level. You find entrepreneurs building interesting things. You find very, very interesting products. You find artists, you find uh, anything. It's limitless. The reason I can't say I'm at a loss of words because I can't even describe some of the things that I've seen on ground. Because you think about the smallest things, from things like dry fruits to handicraft to bigger businesses. People are trying their best to do something. People are trying their best to make something happen at every scale. Which was again something that was very interesting to see. And I think it's what gives us light. It's what gives us in these times. It's what makes us think that there's definitely something that needs to change and will change in a country like Pakistan, and it will happen purely through the might of these people who are going into this grind on a daily basis and trying to make a change.
Yeah, what I often remind policymakers is that, if an entrepreneur is scaling over in the sort of last 3 years, 4 years, since 2018, let's say, in the last 5 years,
Yeah,
has been able to
yeah,
scale and survive in a business, imagine what
yeah.
they would be able to do if you just gave them a little bit more stability,
Exactly.
right? And
Exactly.
it would
Exactly.
unleash so much growth that, and that's what keeps you going. I think that's what keeps me going with this podcast and with these conversations, is that just this much more stability, just a little bit, not too
That's
much,
all
just
you
a
need.
little bit.
That's all you need.
That's all
Exactly.
we need. So I think you and your team are doing amazing work. It's super
Thank you so
exciting.
much.
I think
Thank you
tourism
so
is
much.
just such a sector that's not only great for local communities, right? But it's great to bind people to each other. People realize that
Yeah.
we're all human, whether you're coming from
Yeah.
abroad, whether you're going from
Yeah.
Karachi to Skardu or whatever. It's
Yeah.
it's one of those things. So amazing, amazing work. Wish you all the best. And before I let you
Thank
go,
you.
what are 2 or 3 books you would recommend to the audience?
So, I thought a fair deal about this, but I think one book that I love, and it's one of my favorites, is The Last Days of Night by Graham Moore. I don't know if you've read it, but it's a historical fiction on the lives of Thomas Edison, George Westinghouse, and the rise of Nikola Tesla in that period. And I think it being a historical fiction makes it the most entertaining way anyone could tell that story. So that's number one. The second one, and this is a book that I like to have by my side at most times, is World Travel, an irreverent guide by Anthony Bourdain. again, if you're interested in traveling and if you're interested in experiences, who better to tell it than, the ultimate traveler himself. So these are
Yeah.
two books that I would recommend to anyone
Well,
who's
Bourdain's
asking.
the ultimate modern storyteller, right? I think
Yeah,
I was talking to somebody just a couple of days ago about how he changed people's understanding of what it meant to go to different places and experience,
yep.
not just, staying in a
I'm
hotel.
I'm one of those people. I'm one of
Okay.
those people.
So I'm with you on that one. And I think again in so many ways it was one of the few celebrity deaths that really hit me at heart, in the
Yeah,
sense that
yeah,
you and I
yeah,
and many of us who know of him would look at his shows when he was doing them and say, I want that life. And for him to do what he did, to take his own life away on the road while he was doing something we all would
yeah,
think would be so amazing, right? There was a darker
yeah.
side to him that many people, including his viewers,
Exactly.
most of them did not understand. But what a
Yeah,
storyteller. I mean,
absolutely.
I'll just I would love your thoughts on what your favorite episode of his was. But for me, one of the most favorite episodes he did was when he went to Chernobyl, in Ukraine, and had that little, reader for radiation. And I was like, what the hell are you doing? Like, really? You're going to have an experience in Chernobyl while there's a radiation? And he showed these weird plants growing and all of that because of the radiation. But that's one that sticks in my mind. I don't know, before we let you
Listen,
go, if you want to share one of your favorite stories.
listen. I can't give you a single favorite because I'm in love with most of them. I think the Chernobyl one definitely is a highlight. But it's about the reason it really resonates with me is because he's able to live through those experiences. A lot of times, when you're traveling, and you could be the biggest traveler in the world. But a lot of times when you're traveling, you really have this checklist. You have to do this, have to do this, have to do this, have to do this. And in those moments, and getting from one place to another, you aren't living what that place is all about, right? You aren't really experiencing what that place is all about. And I think that's a big shift in what Anthony Bourdain talks about. And that's what really changed how I look at different places for me. I mean, I always was the sort of person, I was always too lazy to have checklists. I was always my trips were always last minute. So I never was able to, go on that bucket list tour. But what his experiences really teach us is, okay, it's not about visiting a fort or seeing historical sites or going to places, typing out places to see on Google and going and seeing all those places. It's about living and breathing every second of every place you're in, right? Which is kind of what I don't want to turn this into a local plugin, but it's kind of what we're trying to do here as well. It's what I did when I was traveling all these cities. It's about meeting new people. It's about having those conversations. It's about understanding those landscapes, and which is also what is it so inherent about hospitality as well, and is what can take a hospitality or an accommodation experience over the line, or really make it stand out. It's that attention to detail. It's those linens. It's what you're using in your toiletries. It's what sort of overall ecosystem you're providing your customers with, which builds into and really makes it be a part of the ecosystem that it's in, of the culture that it's in. So yeah, it's a lot of it has been inspiration in what we've created, and a lot of it has been inspiration for me as I continue to travel the world. So yeah,
Well, thanks.
that's
I couldn't agree more. So thanks for your time. Thanks for the wonderful work you're doing, and again, keep it up. Wish you the best as you scale within and outside Pakistan. And I think as you enter the GCC, perhaps we'll have you back on to talk about that experience and what that market is like. But until then, take care, and Khuda Hafiz.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Uzair. Once again, thank you for having me. It was very interesting to talk to someone who's as passionate about travel as I am, and knows Anthony Bourdain as well as I do. So
Thank
thank
you.
you so much for that, and hopefully, yeah, see you soon on this podcast again.
Take care. Bye bye.